Greetings, boys and girls. Welcome back to PowerDirector Made Simple. On every one of my videos, there is usually an introductory music track that starts out playing at normal volume, but as soon as the opening titles are done displaying and I begin to talk, the volume of the music is reduced to a background level that slowly fades away until the end of the music clip. In my last video, you saw how to reduce the overall volume, but in today's video, I'll show you how the volume level can be varied at the beginning of the video and eventually into a long, slow fade out. On my timeline is the main recorded video clip from the last video that I posted. I also have the two introductory files commonly seen in every video production. It's not until around the 16-second mark that you can see the audio, which is when I begin to speak. Now, so far, I have not placed any background music track on the timeline. I'll drag down the music file called Accept the Challenge and place it on track 2. I'll greatly expand the height of the audio track so that you can see the entire waveform. And when I hover over the beginning of the clip, it indicates a duration of 2 minutes and 38 seconds. Note that the sound levels peak in many locations, indicating that this is much too loud for background music. I'm going to do a little trick that I frequently do in order to avoid making adjustments at volume levels that are so close to the bottom line, it makes any minute adjustments very difficult. Now, with the music selected, I'm going to hit Edit, then Audio Editor on the left side. When the audio editor opens, you can see how the waveform is nearly maxed out in volume levels. I'm going to click on Dynamic Range Compression, and then at the top, I want to move the output gain slider to the left to a reading of around minus 10 dB, but it's much more accurate to just type it in and then hit return. I'm only going with this amount simply because of past experience, and every track may be different. When done, I'm going to hit Apply. Now you can see that the waveform has been significantly reduced in overall volume. I'll click on OK. Back in PowerDirector, after a second or two, the music track waveform gets regenerated and the small green letter I appears in the lower left of that clip. If you look at the waveform, you can tell that around the 22-second mark, the music gets decidedly louder than the first 20 seconds. I'm going to play just about the first 10 seconds. I feel as though the volume needs to be increased up to the point of where I begin to speak at around the 16-second mark. But then it would need to be decreased so that it doesn't drown out my voice. I'll start by placing a control point, better known as a keyframe, at right where my voice begins at around the 16-second mark. I'm then going to place another keyframe at somewhere around 14 seconds. I'll raise that 14-second mark keyframe up to about 6 dB and release it there. Next, I'll raise the initial keyframe up to match at plus 6 dB. Now, if you noticed, it is difficult to click on the small control point and even more difficult to move it to an exact position. If you remember from the last video, here is the better solution. I'll just click on the keyframe icon in the toolbar. Now, what you see were the automatically created keyframes at the beginning and the end, as well as the two that I created. They may look somewhat crowded together, so I'll go up to the timeline in the keyframe settings window and click on the left end and drag it to the right. Now, I'll just place the cursor on the first keyframe by hitting Home. And I'm going to change the exact value on the left to read 6.0 dB. I'll click the second keyframe and repeat that process until it also reads exactly 6.0 dB. I'll click the third keyframe, and then I'm going to set its value down to 0.0 dB. And finally, to complete the fade out at the end of the music, I'll first move the slider bar at the bottom of the settings window all the way to the right so that I'm looking at the last keyframe. I can either click on the keyframe to place the playhead there, but I'll just hit the N key to move it there. Now, I'll move the slider in the left side all the way to the left until it reads -infinity. I can now close the settings window. I'll hit Home to move the playhead to the beginning, and then I'll zoom the timeline out by clicking on the right side and dragging to the left until the entire music track is visible. If you look at the volume line on the music track, you can see that the music starts out loud for about 14 seconds and then fades down substantially until the voice begins, and then continues to fade out over the next 2 minutes. Now, one point of caution here, that third keyframe that I added where my voice begins may sometimes need to be lowered even more, all depending upon the music track and how loud things are being played at that point. My experience in looking at the waveform tells me that it will be drowning out my voice, so I'll make an adjustment directly on the timeline. I'm going to click on that third keyframe, and I'm going to drag it down to about -3 or -3.5. Now with the playhead at start, I'm going to hit play, and for the next 16 seconds or more, watch and listen. How many times in the past... Now this was all identical to what was uploaded in the last video, except for the current video name being added to the title. And one more final tip: after spending all this time to tweak that background music track to just the way you want it, go ahead and lock it down by clicking on the lock icon, which somewhat dims that entire track to alert you to the fact that it is locked. But if you're like me, sometimes you might forget about that track being locked. Now here is a dumb mistake that I've made before. I'm going to move the slider bar at the bottom of the timeline well over to the right until my timeline marker near the 14-minute mark is visible. And then for good measure, I'm going to zoom in on the timeline a little bit. For whatever reason, say I want to bring down the doorbell sound effect from the media library to my timeline. Now watch what happens. As I try to place it on the empty portion of what seems to be a vacant track area, I get the mouse cursor changing to the red flag with the slash through it, which means I am prohibited from doing so. Why? What am I doing wrong? Then after 10 minutes of head scratching, I finally noticed the blue lock icon on that track. I'll just unlock the track and then drag the sound effect down without any problems. The bottom and listen. Well, another senior moment. And don't forget that this technique of varying the sound level can also apply to the audio track of a video clip. Perhaps there was a very loud sound that was recorded at the time that the video was recorded, And now, while in PowerDirector, you can vary the volume on just that small portion of the sound level in the audio. For example, I'm going to move the playhead to just about the 14-minute and 7-second mark, where a few seconds of a little country swing play at a very loud level. I have already established some control points on the volume line and have raised the volume up extensively just for demonstration purposes. I'll hit play for about 5 seconds. Now let's assume that this was the way that it was originally recorded, and I want to turn that volume down somewhat. I would need to create those 4 control points that you see that I've already made. Then it's just a matter of dragging those 2 inward control points down to whatever level you want them to be, such as -2 or -3, for example. I'll reposition the playhead and hit play again. Well, that's all there is to it, folks. With a little practice, you can take full control of your sound levels. And who knows, in a few years you might be working for a major Hollywood production company as the sound engineer. Just make sure to send me tickets to your movie premiere at Grauman's Chinese Theater in Hollywood. I certainly hope that this has been useful to some of you. Thanks to everyone for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I'll see you next time.